first up on The Factor Uncensored, it's a viral video that has led to outrage on social media, an internal investigation and $10 million civil claim. Police say it started with a shoplifting report from Family Dollar of a 4-year-old girl and her aunt stealing a doll and underwear. Police say 22-year-old Drayvon Ames drove off when officers tried to stop him. The car then stopped, letting out the aunt, who was arrested on warrants. Then officers pointed guns at Ames, his pregnant girlfriend, and their 2-year-old their 2 young children, all because they said the 4-year-old took a doll from a Family Dollar store without her parents knowing. Ames says this video saved them all from being killed.
When I tell you to do something, you do it.
I am. I'm complying with everything, sir.
I'm gonna put a cat right there. I tell you to put I can't put my hands on my baby.
It doesn't open. I promise. I promise it doesn't open.
You're gonna get shot. Get your hands off.
He just seemed like he was trigger happy. He wanted to shoot someone that day. There was about 12 officers out there, and they all looked at it in disgust at that guy. That one guy who was really acting up, they all looked at it in disgust at that guy, the way he was acting, over a Barbie doll.
I apologize to the community. I apologize for the action of our employees out at the scene. Each time I watch it, it becomes more and more disturbing because that's not representative of the other 2,900 police officers we have.
Because of this physical brutality in the case where the individuals were 100% compliant all of the time with no excuse for it, is the reason that we've made a $10 million notice of claim.
Now, the doll was returned to Family Dollar, and authorities issued the father a traffic ticket for driving with a suspended license and impounded his vehicle. Phoenix's mayor has apologized to the family and the city. Hip-hop mogul Jay-Z has stepped in to help the family and has hired high-powered attorney Alex Spiro for their legal team. Here to discuss this is Ashton P. Woods of Black Lives Matter Houston, and former police officer, talk show host, former judge, and attorney currently, Charles Adams. Glad to have you on The Factor Uncensored. Charles, taking a look at that video. It's got to be rough for anyone looking at it. Did these officers go too far, or this officer?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely inexcusable. Not only did this officer go too far, any officer that didn't intercede while witnessing it failed to do their job. It's disgusting. You know, there are some parts that aren't getting reported, like the police are claiming that Ames, the male, admitted that they had shoplifted other things and thrown them out the window and stuff. But let's assume that that's true. It still doesn't justify their behavior, right? And I think it's clearly, like, I don't know the officer well enough to say that he's just a bully who has some sort of insensitivity to everyone he perceives as powerless, or it is, you know, based on bigotry. But I'll tell you, I'm a betting man. I would put odds that it was racism, right? Because he clearly did not view those people as human beings, because you don't treat human beings like that, right? Do I think a $10 million lawsuit is absurd? Of course it's absurd. Do they deserve some sort of compensation? Yes. You know, the real problem is if a 4-year-old stole the doll, if that narrative is true, the 4-year-old in Arizona has no criminal culpability, no ability to have the mens rea to make the decision to steal. It's not a crime. The only way the parents committed the crime is that they encouraged the child to steal and be law of parties. There's no evidence of that. But at the end of the day, as a cop, you have to evaluate your situation situationally. I saw nothing that suggested a perception of threat. I saw nothing that justified that language or that violence towards that family, even if they did steal. The whole thing was disgusting.
Ashton Woods, let's bring you into this conversation. What we always hear when we have individuals in a situation like this is comply, comply, comply. Right. There were so many confusing demands and orders from that officer. How could you possibly comply?
Well, this is the perfect example of why people shouldn't be talking that trash about comply and complain later, right? You can do everything by the book, but Sandra Bland ain't here anymore. Pamela Turner isn't here anymore. Chester Jackson is in the hospital in Austin. So what can we do? We've been working to change laws, right? But the enforcement of said laws, for example, like here in Texas with the Sandra Bland Act, requires officers to treat things differently. But we see in Arizona, is indicative, really, to be honest with you, of something that's been happening. This is the one that got to the news media, to be honest with you. So this requires us to examine why all the news reports are coming out about white supremacists infiltrating law enforcement, right? That's verifiable information. We need to look and review at how we police people in general, how we actually enforce the laws, and how we actually respect citizens who are taxpayers. Regardless of whether we think they stole or not, that was unexcusable.
Charles, let's bring you, he made a comparison to Sandra Bland, Pamela Turner, all those fair assessments in his case.
His position on comply and complain is just flatly dumb, okay, and it's pandering. Okay, more importantly,
no, you're pandering.
Sandra, I didn't
you're
interrupt
pandering.
You, sir. Sandra
I'm
Bland,
interrupting you.
Sandra Bland took her
you
own life.
You're white-splaining. You're white-splaining. You don't have to. You don't have to. You don't have to translate anything for me, white boy. You ain't got to translate nothing for me. It's not dumb.
He's calling me racial names. He's engaging in bigotry because that's
I called
what
you
he
by
does.
your identity with your privilege.
Let's go one at a time.
At the end of the day, what these officers did was unconscionable, but we see that. He said, oh, this is the media picked it up. No, we see it all the time. Chandler, Arizona, last week as well, just miles away. An officer talked a man off a ledge who was going to commit suicide, a person of color,
for doing the right
because he offered him a hug. We don't hear about that in the media. But all we hear is negative story after negative story after negative story of officers. Now, I believe there are racist officers out there. They need to be identified and removed from the force. We need to do a better job about identifying bullies before they're hired so they don't get a chance. All right? But this suggestion by Ashton that he makes all the time that this is a tide of racist officers out there. No, what would you do in America without police?
You seem upset.
Okay, no, because you called me all kinds of
racial names. You called me dumb.
No, I said your position was dumb.
I'm looking you in the eye.
I'm looking you in the eye. I'm sorry.
What I said was not dumb.
I won't say stupid.
You should have been a cop.
Okay.